Today on Another Thing, the Iranian nuclear arms deal. We talk with the Consul General from Israel and an Iranian American about the proposed deal. Dawn takes us to a unique nature center that nurses wildlife back to health. And my commentary is on NBC's vicious campaign against one of its stars. I'm Larry Menti. Welcome to Another Thing. The Iranian nuclear arms deal is dominating the news, with President Obama running into fierce opposition from Republicans, some in his own party, and Israel, one of our closest allies. In a moment, we'll hear about reaction to the possible deal inside Iran. But first, Ellen Kolodziej gets reaction from the Consul General of Israel. Ellen.
On April 6, Iran and 6 other countries came up with a tentative agreement to scale back Iran's nuclear program. Supporters say it's the safest way to stop Iran from developing a nuclear bomb. But opponents, including Israel, say it's naive and dangerous.
We are very concerned, of course. You have a combination of the most dangerous regime on the face of this earth that also happens to call day in, day out for Israel's destruction, potentially on the verge of acquiring the most dangerous weapon on the face of this earth that will actually allow it at will to take steps towards what it preaches.
Yarone Sideman is the Consul General of Israel to the Mid-Atlantic region. He doesn't believe for 1 second that Iran will stop its quest for a nuclear bomb or be open to any inspections of its nuclear sites, despite President Obama's stance that lifting sanctions will avoid a military conflict.
Why lift sanctions if sanctions are the major thing, if not the only thing, that actually brought the Iranians to the table? And they were the main lever or the main factor with which you can negotiate. Lifting them simply gives zero incentive for Iran to make any concessions further on down the road. And why would it?
Israel isn't the only country worried about this deal. Members of the Gulf Cooperation Council, which includes Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, will meet with President Obama at the White House next month. And the U.S. Congress wants to approve any deal before it moves forward.
A military nuclear Iran will spark, in all likelihood, a military arms race in the region, and it will put the entire world in danger.
So it's back to the bargaining table because the president of Iran says unless all the sanctions are lifted immediately, the deal is off. And that will be a tough sell for Republicans and some Democrats in Congress. Both sides, though, hope to come up with some kind of an agreement by June 30th. Reporting for Another Thing, I'm Ellen Kolodziej.
All right, thank you, Ellen. Let's talk more about the Iranian nuclear arms deal. And joining the conversation now is Kayvon Afshari, who is with the Iranian Council. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Larry.
Let's talk about this deal. You know what kind of a political football it is right now with a lot of people, both Democrats and Republicans, who are pro-Israeli, saying this deal cannot go forward. Some of the senators in the U.S. Senate signing a letter and sending it to Iran saying don't do this deal because we'll just overturn it when a new president gets in. Mm-hmm. With all of that happening in this country, even with the president wanting the deal, what do you think the likelihood is that it's going to happen?
Well, I'm optimistic about it, really, and it's for 3 reasons. Because first, the Obama administration has expended a tremendous amount of political capital in favor of this deal. Obama made this very clear that this is an issue of legacy for him right when he came into office. He gave a big speech about this. So he, John Kerry, Wendy Sherman, they've all expended political capital on it, so they really need a win. Secondly, the stakes are really high here. And the stakes are high on 2 fronts, I would say. First, if we can get a deal on this, it could have huge positive reverberations for regional stability. And thirdly, it could be used as a pivot. This is what the Iranian American Council believes. It could be used as a pivot in order to improve U.S.-Iran bilateral relations. Because we'll have seen finally an instance in which diplomacy, if this deal works out, produced tangible results rather than going through a war. So that's what we're hoping, is that diplomacy works out and then that can be pivoted towards broader U.S.-Iran relations.
The way I understand the deal, and I think some of the people that are critical of it, is that there'd be a decade-long moratorium. Right. And then the president has admitted in an article, in an interview, that after that decade-long moratorium, Iran could start up a nuclear program just like that. As a matter of fact, they could advance the program during that decade and then be able to start up for 10 years. So this just puts off an inevitable? Is that fair?
Sure. Well, there's two issues here. So first, Iran has a nuclear program. The issue is keeping it within a purely peaceful, so civilian nuclear program. They, of course, because as a non-weapon signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, they have the right to a nuclear program. So that's, enrichment and, mining uranium, et cetera. So they have that right to nuclear, peaceful nuclear power.
It's making it military.
But it's right, exactly. So that's first. But more importantly, the issue here is less about centrifuges, I think, and more about mistrust between the United States and Iran, which there's tremendous mistrust. I mean, we can go through the whole history of this, of the United States mistrusting Iran because of the hostage crisis, and Iran mistrusting the United States because of Operation Ajax in 1953 and other things. So what this deal can provide is a basis to start to build some of that trust so that this international issue that's been such a thorny issue for 12 years now can basically be resolved through the two sides trusting each other, and Iran continuing to, it's not as though there's going to be no inspections after 10 years. There's still going to be strict inspections, but they're going to be loosened after that initial period.
We had strict inspections in Iraq. That didn't turn out really well. The reason we went into Iraq, the people forget, in the first place was because the inspectors were thrown out and not allowed in. There were supposed to be UN inspections, and he didn't allow it. So, some people look at the Iraqi deal. I know it's a lot different on a lot of things, but the way it turned out was so bad that do we want to get into that kind of deal again?
Right. Well, we haven't really had those kind of issues with Iran. Iran has had certain issues within the IAEA in terms of diversion from civilian to unknown nuclear purposes. But those issues need to be resolved within the IAEA is what we're trying to say. So right now they've moved from the IAEA to the UN Security Council, where there are Security Council resolutions that are imposing serious costs on Iran in terms of sanctions and demanding that they cease their missiles program. Right now, those have to be resolved in the UN Security Council first, but what we believe moving forward is that this should remain an IAEA file. So if there's problems that the IAEA detects, the IAEA should be responsible for working with Iran to clarify any of these PMD's possible military dimensions. What we certainly don't want, because you mentioned the Iraq war, the Iraq issues, we don't want this to turn into another regional war, which is something that almost very few people want, is it to be another Iraq.
Yeah, but there was a nuclear arms deal in place before that, and that did. And what I'm saying is that led to the Iraq War. I mean, I know there was other factors, including 9/11 and including President Bush wanting to go after Iraq, but that was the catalyst for it. The fact that they left out UN inspectors, if you remember at the time. Mm-hmm. So I think people bring that up when they're talking about this.
Are not perfect, but they're the best verification measure that we have right now. But ultimately, what we need to see is the United States and Iran starting to really talk seriously about these issues. And I think there was a positive sign that just came out just 2 days ago or so, where State Department spokeswoman Marie Harf was saying basically that the road is open if we want to talk about these regional issues. She mentioned Syria specifically, which has had a 4-year civil war.
Right. No,
that's another.
It's horrible. I want to real quickly,
sure,
because they're wrapping me up. I want to talk about how this is being taken inside Iran,
sure,
and if a deal doesn't happen, what could happen inside Iran?
Absolutely. Well, the Iranians are jubilant in terms of the people there. I mean, they were dancing in the streets, literally dancing in the streets after the political framework was announced just about 3 weeks ago or so. So they are very happy because for a few reasons. I mean, part of it is that they're happy over this nuclear deal finally getting resolved, but I think it's more than that. The second issue is sanctions removal, of course, which is something that they want. They want to be open to the rest of the world. They want to engage in exchange, academic exchange, cultural exchange, etc. But most importantly, I think it's this broader U.S.-Iran relations that the people of Iran want to see ultimately resolved, because this has been 36 years of this institutionalized enmity that has gone on for way too long, and I think it's hurt both sides. There is some pushback too. I don't want to be, look at this with rosy-colored glasses.
There's hardliners there
exactly.
as well.
There's revolutionaries there as well, and you have to understand these people as children of the Islamic Revolution. So they see the United States through a particular revolutionary lens, and through that lens, they see an imperialist state. And so to them, they're very skeptical of engaging with what they refer to as the Great Satan. In a nuclear deal.
It's tough to negotiate with somebody when they see you as the Great Satan, but you're saying they're not the negotiators at this time. You've been excellent, and thank you for all the information. I really appreciate it. Kayvon Afshari, who is with the American Iranian Council. Thanks for that perspective. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more about one of the names that's dominating the news, and we'll have to deal with this issue, maybe Hillary Clinton, when another thing continues.